In our politics lead now, new details about the federal investigation into embattled Florida Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz. Sources are telling CNN that prosecutors are investigating whether the Florida Republican took gifts, including travel and paid escorts, in exchange for political favors. This is all part of an ongoing probe, also examining whether Gaetz engaged in a relationship with a girl that began when she was 17 years old. CNN's Paula Reed joins us now. Paula, what are federal investigators looking at?
Good afternoon, Jake. Sources briefed on the matter say the Justice Department is scrutinizing a 2018 trip to the Bahamas involving Congressman Gaetz and several young women. They're specifically looking at whether that getaway was part of an orchestrated effort to illegally influence the congressman on the issue of medical marijuana. Now, CNN has previously reported Gaetz is under investigation for engaging allegedly in a relationship with a woman who was just 17 when that relationship began. We've also reported that Gaetz attended sex parties in Orlando with other prominent Republicans, that those parties involved women, drugs, and sex in exchange for money. Now, CNN has also learned that investigators already have one key witness who is cooperating, and that is Joel Greenberg. He's the former Seminole County tax commissioner, and he's a close associate of Gaetz. He also attended those sex parties. Now, he was indicted last year on multiple federal charges, including sex trafficking, and he's expected to plead guilty in the coming weeks.
So you report that a number of Gaetz's close associates have ties to the medical marijuana industry. Like who? Who are you talking about?
So the congressman has a long history of advocating for medical marijuana. He's introduced several pieces of legislation at the state and federal levels seeking to loosen laws regulating the drug. Now, according to reports, one of these people, Dr. Jason Pirozzolo, a Florida doctor who founded a medical marijuana advocacy group, accompanied Gaetz on that 2018 trip to the Bahamas. Now, Gaetz has referred to the doctor as one of his best friends, and the pair have repeatedly intersected over medical marijuana. As far back as 2014, Gaetz, then a state representative in Florida, introduced the medical marijuana legislation just 2 weeks after vacationing with Pirozzolo in the Florida Keys. Just 1 week after the legislation passed, Pirozzolo launched a medical marijuana consulting company. Then in 2018, when Gaetz introduced the Medical Cannabis Research Act, a source tells CNN the congressman hand-delivered a fully written draft of the bill to his staff, and it overlapped significantly with the agenda the doctors group had been pushing. Neither Gaetz nor Pirozzolo have been accused by the Justice Department of any wrongdoing or charged with a crime. Pirozzolo's lawyer declined to comment, and a spokesman for Gaetz also declined to comment on the substance of our reporting, but the congressman has previously denied ever paying for sex. Jake?
All right, Paula Reed, thank you so much. Appreciate it. As Republicans grapple with how to handle the Gaetz situation, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi also is facing unique challenges wrangling members of her own party, the Democrats. So let's bring in the Washington bureau chief for USA Today, Susan Page, who has a brand new great biography on Pelosi out called Madam Speaker. Susan, congratulations on the book and the great reviews. You described Speaker Pelosi's relationship with the so-called squad, these four young, very progressive congresswomen, Democratic congresswomen. You describe the relationship as complicated, especially perhaps with Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York, the representative from New York. She came in day one. She joined that sit-in protest in Pelosi's office calling for climate action. But you recall in your book, Pelosi identified with AOC and the squad and their passion. She told you, quote, "I said to these people, I've been you. I was pushing a stroller and carrying a sign. I've been you." Now, fast forward 3 years later, how is their relationship now?
Well, it's still complicated. It is publicly respectful. It is sometimes fraught in private, and I think we're going to see more strains as the squad and most of the most progressive forces in the Democratic Party and in the Democratic House push for bigger and bolder policies. You know, Nancy Pelosi is definitely a liberal. She agrees with some of the most liberal policies, but she's also a pragmatist. She's very much focused on what can you actually get done. And I think that's where she's come to loggerheads with the squad and AOC in particular at some points, because she sometimes thinks they are naive, not respectful of the sausage making process and what compromises that can sometimes entail.
And I know that a lot of members of the Democratic leadership in the House think that the defund the police language hurt House Democrats in their ability to win seats. In fact, they lost seats.
Yeah, a big surprise in the last election. Nancy Pelosi, up until the time the returns came in, thought they were going to gain seats in the House. They didn't. And some of those members from moderate districts, from swing districts, blamed the defund the police rhetoric. That phrase in particular was hurting them with swing voters. That is not a phrase you will hear come out of Nancy Pelosi's mouth. Another one, pack the court. You know, you had Jerry Nadler, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, introduce legislation to expand the Supreme Court. The next day, Nancy Pelosi said, was she going to bring it up to the House for a vote? No.
So Speaker Pelosi and Vice President Harris, they're going to make history next week, sitting behind President Biden when he addresses the joint session of Congress. We all, of course, remember when Pelosi tore up the written speech from Donald Trump in a similar situation in February 2020. Did you ever get a sense that she regretted that action, that moment?
You know, I talked to her at length about that, and Nancy Pelosi, not a person for expressing regrets in general, but about that incident in particular, no. You know, she was sitting there. She had gotten President Trump had given her a text of the speech, as is customary. She was scanning through it to see what he was saying. There was something he had written down in the text that she thought was wrong and wanted to mark. She couldn't find a pen. She opened up the little drawer that's up there on the dais. The drawer was empty. So she made a little tear in the corner so she could find her place where this untruth was in her mind. And then she found another and another, and she kept making a series of little tears in the margin. And by the time he was done, she said, I decided if he was going to shred the truth, I was going to shred his speech. She stood up, she tore it in half 4 times. Meanwhile, of course, Mike Pence, the vice president, standing next to her, pretending not to notice what it was she was doing.
Pelosi, her red coat symbolizes another moment that her fans consider iconic when she left the White House in 2018. She jokes now to you that she can't wear the coat anymore. She's obviously very aware of optics. How important is that skill as she, has reigned in Washington for so long?
Yeah, very important. And, I think never more important than the 4 years of the Trump administration when she became the Democratic face of the opposition to the president, starting from that first meeting, the time she was wearing that red coat, the first time after Democrats had won control of the House, that she and Chuck Schumer were sitting down with the president and vice president, and her sharp retort to Trump when he suggested maybe she wasn't in such a powerful position was something that really fortified her troops behind her and was a signal of what was going to follow for the next couple of years.
You end the biography with the lessons of power from Nancy Pelosi, saying in part, quote, wait to act until you have the votes to win and keep some extra in your pocket. Display a Gucci glove when possible, wield an iron fist when necessary. Do you see an issue where the strategy is working to Pelosi's advantage in particular?
Well, she has the longest tenure as the leader of a party in the House of Representatives since Sam Rayburn. She has been responsible personally for the passage of some of the biggest pieces of legislation that we've had in this century, including the financial bailout in 2008 and the Affordable Care Act in 2009. If you want to look at whether the iron fist in the Gucci glove has worked for her, I think you just look at that and look at the current debate. She's gotten through the House that $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill. We'll see if she'll be able to get this next big infrastructure bill through the House. I would say that people have generally lost money in betting against Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, that's certainly true. Whatever you think of her politics, she's been very, very consequential. Susan Page, her new book is excellent. It's called Madam Speaker. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you, Jake.